Hi, everyone. Welcome to Mar Dreaming. Who's excited to see this awesome presentation today? Make sure you go ahead and leave us your any comments, say hellos, drop your LinkedIn's on the chat. My name is Marcus Ryan from Sir Content, and I will be moderating today's session. We just wanted to make sure that you have some reminders. The sessions will be recorded, decks will be available for everybody on demand after the event. We will also make sure that we follow up if you guys have any questions that you don't get to ask Tammy while you were in this presentation. But if you do have a question, help us out. Throw in that QA tab on the right side of your screen, and we'll be good to go. Today, I have the honor of introducing you to one of our amazing trailblazers, Tammy Begley, from MediaMonks, who is joining us from very, very far away. So please give her your undivided attention, and we're looking forward to the session. So with that being said, Tammy, take it away.
Thanks, Marcus, and welcome everyone. Thank you so much for taking the time today to come and listen to my session. As Marcus says, my name is Tammy Begley, and I'm the head of marketing automation at MediaMonks in APAC. I've actually been in the Salesforce ecosystem now for about 12 years. I have been a leader of the Melbourne Pardot user group, or account engagement user group as we call it now, for the last 4 years. I've been on the Marketing Champions program since its inception, so that's 2 years, and I am very privileged to have a seat on the Marketing Cloud Salesforce Partner Advisory Board. And that's been the last 3 years. So as you can see, I am a true trailblazer. Today, I'm going to be talking to you a little bit about personalization at scale by leveraging a strong first-party foundation. Please, as Marcus says, feel free to ask questions. If I can't get to the questions during the session, I will definitely come back to you afterwards. But first up, I'd like to acknowledge our sponsors. Without them, we wouldn't have these kind of events. So thank you very much. This is great. Let's have a quick look at our agenda. So first up, I'm going to talk to you about data activation frameworks and the impact on customer experience. Now, when I talk about personalization, I feel like customer experience and personalization for me go hand in hand. So I wanted to start with that and just sort of set the scene with that. I'm then going to turn towards covering personalization and where it shows up and how we can scale. Then I'm going to cover off some tips on how to get personalization right. I always cover some of the personalization no-nos that are, for me, things that we really shouldn't be doing in this day and age. And then the exciting piece at the end is I look at AI and how that is really driving and going to give us the ability to drive hyper-personalization. So let's take a look at the data activation framework to begin with and how we use this to be able to scale on personalization. So what I have here is we basically, if we look at the data activation framework, we make sure that it transforms raw data into impactful customer experiences. So if we look at it in these 4 sort of blocks, we've got data, we've got intelligence, we've got activation, and we've got experience. So the data piece is looking at where the data is captured, stored, processed, and then helping to inform decision-making. The next step along is, what are you doing with the data and how are you transforming it into your business segments and insights? So the insights being those things that you use to help you the next time you craft a campaign. The activation piece is, where are we going to be using digital experiences? So how are we authoring them? Who are we targeting? How are we orchestrating them? And then the experience side itself is the actual activation. So we're delivering those messages, and how do we measure them and how do we optimize them? So if we flesh this out and look at the full steps to execute transformational customer experience, you can see there on the slide that what I've done is I've actually just increased underneath all of those things steps that we feel are undertaken in that process. So essentially we've got where I've highlighted in lilac or pink or purple, whatever you see on the screen, are places where I feel personalization shows up in this process. and more strongly, I suppose, than in those other blocks. So if we think about the collection piece, this is probably for me one of the most important parts of getting personalization right, is at the collection stage. It's understanding what information you want to collect about your customers and what information they would be prepared to give to you that then allows you to be able to jump to the next stage, which is that segmentation piece. So how do we use the information we've collected and make sure we're collecting the right information to be able to then inform our segmentation? You can see in the activation side of things, I've colored everything in because I feel like in activation, everything is sort of aligned with personalization and is going to influence personalization. So if you think of your instrumentation, how activation channels are being instrumented on customer touch points. And we're going to talk about customer touch points and collection of data in some of the tips and tricks a little bit later on. Targeting, like how customers are targeted with comms and experiences. So which comes down to the content. How do we craft content that's the right content for those target audiences that then you can orchestrate so you can put people on the right journey to be able to get the right message delivered. So that's a little bit more around there. So basically, in sort of summary, I feel like the data activation framework gives you a structure to minimize your risk and to drive value from your data. So by setting that scene and just understanding that there is a framework and there is a way to look at your data and how you use it, let's jump into hearing more on personalization. So personalization for me, and I always like to sort of give myself a definition of what I'm working towards. And this is sort of what I feel the definition of personalization for me in the marketing world is. It requires meeting customers' needs and catering to their interests effectively and efficiently. We all like a little bit of a few statistics. So we know that personalization drives ROI. So that's clear. But we also know that marketing people like ourselves are struggling to execute it. And so if any of you on the call today are still feeling like you can't get a grasp and a handle on this, and you feel like it's too complex past first name, you're not alone. You're not alone. But if you look at the statistics, it says that 78% of our online customers are more likely to purchase with a personalized experience. They're also saying that there's an increase, a lift of 10 to 15% from personalization, where organizations are actually excelling at personalization. But the last statistic says that 68% of marketing leaders are still struggling with personalization. So you're not alone, but I think hopefully this session will give you a few bare basics that you can then take away and start to look at using within your businesses. So let's have a look at this. Now, when I think of personalization, I actually think of 5 things. But what we're saying in this diagram is we're saying that personalization at scale happens when all these areas intersect. So the 5 areas that I always think about is data. Absolutely. The data and analytics is the foundations of everything we do. And that's why I started this morning with, or this afternoon, I should say, I think for you, with that piece. The next piece that I think is critical is understanding your customer experience and understanding what it is that you want to create, what are the touch points, and how do you want to engage with your customer. The next most important point for me is the creative and content. So what kind of creative and content are you creating that supports all of your audiences and the data that you've been able to collect, that's been able to help you segment into the different audiences? And then the last piece is the digital media piece, which is kind of collecting all the data from your socials and programmatic advertising and bringing them in. So you can see that central point where it says personalization and there's a little light bulb. That's where we think when those 4 things intersect is where personalization at scale really happens. The last piece that I always add in here, and I think if we could just sprinkle a little bit of experimentation on top of all of this, I feel like you would be on a winning wicket. So some of you might be thinking, and this is one of the things I come across very frequently, is a lot of companies still work in silos. So the data team don't talk to the content and creative team, or are never pulled into the same meetings. Customer experience doesn't talk to data, they don't talk to content. The digital media team are not speaking to maybe data or digital, and that's probably the less likely example. Digital media and data normally do talk, but there's somewhere in your business where one of those four functions don't talk to each other and they work in silos. And if you're not working as a cross-functional team and collaborating together on all the little elements that are inside those circles, this is where you're going to fail on getting personalization right. Personalization means working together with many different people in the business to make sure you're all on the same page and you're all going towards the same goal. So next, I'm going to talk to you about some tips on getting personalization right. And the first tip I'm going to talk to you about is actually how do you build a data foundation to support data-driven marketing at scale? So as you've heard today, I'm emphasizing that data is a key element to getting right, to be able to get personalization right. So this is why I want to give you this tip. So what you need to start thinking about is how do you standardize your data when you start collecting it? What taxonomies are you using so that you can compare apples to apples? So when the data is coming in, you're able to quickly compare and then connect data. So one of the key things, and I say it all the time to our customers, naming conventions across multiple platforms is a key thing to be considering in all your data collection points and the way that you structure your campaigns. The next step is, right, so we know that we've got the standardization of data, and we know that we now need somewhere, a central repository where we can get all the data and bring it all together. So making sure you've got the ability to take that data and bring it all together from all the different locations. Having that is really, really critical, because then it allows you to start to unify your data using common identities. And that then starts to give you a C360 view of your customer. Now, I've always maintained that CRM is the center of everything and the master of everything. I think into today's world, as I'm starting to see data cloud and everything, I'm starting to feel like a central area where we've unified data and we have common IDs, and that we're going to get a much truer C360 view of our customers. Once we've done all of that, we want to make sure we can turn the data into insights. So we have to have a centralized insight discovery and activation orchestration area where we can then start to turn that data into insights to help inform us as to what we're going to do next. And then the last piece is, once you've got all those four pieces together, is now we can activate and optimize. And this is where we can see true personalization at scale. If we had to add another piece into there, it would probably be, how do you use AI to make that even more efficient, which I'm going to cover at the end of the session. So if I take another look at a tip on how you could be thinking about your personalization and getting it right, is think about strategy and technology together. So the first step is make sure you understand your customer. Now, for some of you on the call today, you may not have done enough work around personas. I must emphasize, and as a marketer, when I was in the marketing manager role many, many years ago, I used to feel like this kind of stuff was fluff. And it would frustrate me that people kept saying, well, what's the persona? What's the customer journey? Now that I'm in the technology and I understand that actually to get the best out of this, you need to do this kind of work, I emphasize to customers, start with a persona. So build your personas on behaviors, make sure you can convert your personas to individuals, and then look and map your current customer experience. So what does your customer experience look like in a customer journey map? And that, some people say to me, how do we start? How do we even think about our customer journey? For me, the customer journey map is really looking at that awareness, consideration, decision, and then loyalty or retention. Make it simple and start to think about, in each of those buckets, how are you engaging your customers and what does the experience look like for them? The next thing is if you can map that, then start to look at the gaps that you have of your customers' needs and what you're presenting in your customer experience and your touch points that you're giving them. So once you've got those gaps, you can start to say, well, let's take a look at prioritizing touch points and let's identify areas that need the most improvement. They're going to make the best impact. And then prioritize those based on the readiness and the value to your organization. And then once you're looking at your touch points, you might actually realize that you're missing tools. And so you start to think about your mapping of your gaps and how technology is going to fill those gaps, making the customer experience even better. So looking at your tech stack that you have and thinking of ways to integrate that with each other or way so that makes that experience better, or even starting to look at new tools. So if we're looking at personalization, Salesforce has a really great product, a personalization product called Marketing Cloud Personalization. And that for me is if you're trying to get personalization right and you're really sort of starting at the basics and you're trying to find somewhere where an easy way to unify data, that tool actually has a real basic starting point, I guess, to things like CDPs and Salesforce's data cloud. So if you're interested in Marketing Cloud Personalization, Claudia and Nathan are going to do the most fantastic talk tomorrow. I think it's at 2 p.m. tomorrow, where they're going to be talking about how to use personalization with Marketing Cloud account engagement. So don't miss that session. They've come up with a fantastic solution that no one in the world has thought about yet, and they're going to be presenting that tomorrow. Right, so some of you might be thinking, well, if I want to start with the persona stuff, what do I do? Where do I start? And really, it's basic. All you need to do is sit down and think about your customers or your target groups and your typical groups of audiences, and then map out on an Excel spreadsheet sort of who they are, or if it's a B2B, what role do they play? What is their position? If we look at their background information, what's their occupation? What's their educational background? What are their hobbies and interests? Think about demographics, age, the gender, their household income, where they live. Think about, and this one for me is a really important one, is like, where do they like to be contacted? Do they like email? Are they on socials? Do they like events? So have a think about those ideal people and think about all the information. And there's a lot more. You can Google how to create personas and you can get some great guides as to things you can think about. So then start to formulate that persona. The next thing you need to think about is, what data would we be able to collect about that person that they'd be willing to offer us when they're filling in forms or when we're on the phone with them? Because that's the data that we want to make sure we talk to our CRM admins about and say, as marketers, we want you to add these fields onto our Salesforce environment because this is information that's important for us to use to be able to segment on. So it's really important that you start to talk to your CRM admins and your marketing teams and make sure you're collaborating so that you can bring some of this information to light. Obviously, I wouldn't be asking your teams to be able to try and capture every piece of information that you've collected about your persona, because there's some information that we might not know or might not be able to ask them directly. But there's also information like your information habits that through tools that you're using, suddenly you can start to get more information on them and you can start to then use that to build your insights on your customers to be able to target and your segment your audiences. So things like, are they subscribed to your email list? Do they open and click your emails? Do they follow your organization on social media? Do they attend any of your in-person or virtual events? How frequently do they share information about your organizations to their network? So having tools where you can start to track that, integrating that, and then pulling it in really helps you be able to build a true sort of match as to how each individual person in your organization matches the personas that you have created. So hopefully, if you can take that away today and start doing that, I think that's a really important thing. The next thing, obviously, is once you've done that is look at those customer journeys, like I said. Think about it in those buckets and then start to map out where your touch points are. And for me, if you're using a marketing automation platform, I then start to say, where are the low-hanging fruits in those touch points of things that you can automate so the marketing team don't have to be worrying about doing those things on a daily basis. They just get done. So next up, I've got a couple of personalization no-nos. And so these for me, I feel very strongly about. I think most of us on the call would have an experience that they've gone through, and I've probably not even touched on those experiences. But my advice to you is just think about things that frustrate you when people don't get personalization right. And you might have sort of understood this from me today. When I say personalization, I'm not just meaning first name. I'm meaning all that information that we were talking about, you wanting to collect about those customers to be able to segment properly. You need to make sure that you have a way of updating the data, or at least giving the customer a way to update their data so that they can give you the right information. So here are a couple of my no-nos. Firstly, absolute deal breaker, you cannot get personal details wrong. In this day and age, where we've got tools where we can capture details all the time and update them, we really cannot get that wrong. And I don't just mean their first name. Things like birthdays, things like their age group, things like their gender, things like, those sort of things for me are real sort of blatant ones that you cannot get wrong. The other one that I find really frustrating is and the example I have is the school sent out an email, and it came the school sent it out of a generic school email address, but it actually was the headmaster trying to talk to the parents and coming across in a very personal manner in the email. But very quickly, I could see that this has come from a generic email address, but they're trying to be personal and say that it's looked like it's been sent from the headmaster, and straight away that just got my back up. So, don't send personal emails if you're going to send them from generic email addresses. Personal emails come from people. The other experience that I've had recently is canned offers that are individually that you cannot take advantage of. So my experience is my uncle is a massive Lakers fan. It was his birthday. I didn't know what to get him, so I decided I'd quickly jump online and order him a Lakers jumper. And then I did the whole transaction. He got the jumper. He was very excited. But guess what happened? At the time of purchase, the company didn't ask me if this gift was for me or for someone else. So now I'm getting all these Lakers emails about swag, about all sorts of things from this company. And I've actually just unsubscribed because I'm not interested in buying any more Lakers stuff. I would buy other stuff, but now I have unsubscribed from their email distribution. So all that would have taken to get that right is at the time of purchase, asking me a very simple question. Is this gift for me or is this a gift for someone else? And then the last thing that I feel is really strongly about in today's day and age, because I know there's platforms out there like Advertising Studio that help you to suppress certain retargeting. So that age old when something that you've been looking at follows you and you've already purchased it, but you keep getting the ads on Instagram, or you keep seeing the stuff on Facebook, and they keep popping those ads up in front of you, but you've already purchased the pair of shoes, or I don't know what it is. For me, that's a waste of money for the company. And secondly, it's also completely irrelevant that they don't know me, and they're not sure that they don't know that as a customer, I've actually bought that product already. And if they used suppression tools, they would be saving themselves heaps of money. So that's my no-nos. The next part I'm going to cover off, and I've got 2 more slides left, and then we'll be done, is the exciting part of AI. So how is AI going to help drive what we call hyper-personalization? I'm just going to touch on 2 things today. My colleagues, Claudia and myself, are going to be talking on Friday. I think it's the last session at 2:15 on Friday afternoon. And we're actually going to be deep diving into how AI, content generation, Salesforce platforms are all going to be working together to really sort of scale personalization and scale content generation. But first, I'm going to talk to you a little bit more on how I think AI is going to scale and make it possible. So the biggest blocker in the past that we've always found with clients is the ability to create enough content to be able to personalize to little subsets and subset audiences. They just can't keep up the volume, the pace. And so what we are seeing is a lot of companies are seeing a massive change in this ability by AI. So MediaMonks has been working in the AI space for many, many, many years. On the screen, you'll see some work that we've done with The Weeknd on Spotify, where it was a virtual assistant. We've worked on called Kiki, and she is an interpreter that actually for the deaf people. So when they come on and they want to ask for like a chat bot for questions, they want to ask questions, she actually can sign language the answers back to them. We've done things from apps where you can take photos of yourself and you can start to superimpose makeup on yourself, or you can walk into a store and you can take photos and start to put the outfits on in different colors. But this is all virtually, right? So we're really seeing a massive shift in the ability to personalize things with AI. And it's exciting. If we think about MediaMonks and Salesforce, we really feel like we've got a great partnership here. And so MediaMonks has been announced as one of the 4 AI partners with Salesforce on AI. We've been working on what we call that synthetic content. So that was that content at scale that I was talking about. And what we've experienced through the synthetic content piece is we've seen content creation and generation that's taken us 6 months to pull together, moving right down to 6 minutes to produce the same content. So you can imagine 6 months into 6 minutes suddenly means you can take, we might have been able to produce hundreds of different digital assets at that time in a 6-month period because it took that long. And now in the 6-minute time, we're now suddenly open to being able to produce millions of pieces of content, which then suddenly makes you realize how you can start to really personalize all those little bits of content if you've got your segmentation right and you're putting people into the right journeys. And this is exactly where Salesforce and MediaMonks come together. So you would have heard of Einstein 1, which was launched at Dreamforce, where they spoke about their new AI platform, and they're naming it Einstein 1. So the first cab off the rank for them is this AI segmentation. So it's powered segmentation that then quickly segments your audiences. The next piece that they spoke about is the ability to hyper-personalize journeys and be able to take those audiences and pop them in the right journeys, because the system will be able to create the number of journeys that you need for each of those different audience types. And then if you lay over the MediaMonks synthetic content, if I've got multiple journeys happening, means I need multiple pieces of content. MediaMonks can come in and actually design all those multiple pieces of content that then help support the journey. And at the end of the day, the time to do that would have been so quick and so much quicker than the past that you'll see return on investment much, much quicker. And this little piece of this sort of process that I'm talking about can happen across your conversion, your retention, your nurturing, and your win-back processes and journeys. So it's really exciting stuff. As I say, we in MediaMonks have already seen heaps of awesome synthetic content being produced for multiple countries, companies, I should say. So my key takeaways from today, just for all of you, and my time is nearly up, are the following. I think you've heard me today speak about data. And again, it's my number one takeaway. Data is number one to making personalization possible. The other piece and nugget that I haven't spoken about is don't forget about your untapped data. We've got a lot of data sitting in Excel spreadsheets or in systems that have been filed that we don't actually utilize. So part of what our data team does is it actually helps customers unravel some of that untapped data and bring it into your system so that you can now suddenly see that C360 view in a much, much better way. Make sure you've got your consent management sorted. With the world of AI and the ability to produce so much content and go out to so many more channels, you've got to have consent management sorted. You need to make sure your customers trust that when they want to get off of your channels and get out of them and unsubscribe, that it is acknowledged. We know that fines are huge around that, but please, that's a really important part. The other piece is make your personalization authentic. Don't be creepy. Don't be irritating. Make it authentic, and you will get a much better result. The piece I spoke about earlier is experiment, experiment, experiment. If you don't experiment, how are you ever going to know what's working and what's not working, and how are you ever going to do anything different? And the last piece is embrace AI as a way of working. It's here to stay. It's not going away. It's going to transform our lives completely. And so let's get on the boat and let's do it. And I know there's lots of AI presentations this week. I would definitely take them on board. What I have given you is a little gift today. We have written an AI report with Salesforce. And so please, I'll leave this QR code up on the screen for the last few seconds of the presentation. But please, feel free to download this and have a read. I love the way it's been written.